So my name is Daniel Brent, and this is joint work with some of my colleagues at Monash, and it's a project funded by the CRC for water-sensitive cities, and there's a couple of stakeholders also involved at the council level. And I'm pretty fresh to Australia, so I've been here for about 5 weeks, and so they threw me in right away to all the presentations. But I'm really happy that I'm here because what I found is water is very local, and there are social, economic, and regulatory issues that are very specific to countries and regions, and I'm really interested and glad that I can hopefully learn from a lot of you guys today. So our project is on valuing stormwater management, and I think it's actually a pretty good complement to Phil's talk earlier, and we're going to go a little bit into the specific attributes that consumers may value within a broader stormwater management framework. So my background is in economics and environmental economics, and a big part of that is non-market valuation. So we want to have sort of benefits monetized so that we can weigh them against costs, but for goods that we don't provide and that aren't provided in the market, this can be difficult. And so environmental economists have different techniques to try to monetize these benefits. And so here's my little graphic about it. We use some math, data, and statistics. So in our setting, this is willingness to pay for stormwater management, and we also run a choice experiment that's used to elicit values for specific attributes of the stormwater management. We do this with a survey method out in the field. And we've identified a couple elements of stormwater management through focus groups and discussion with people in industry at the council level that are associated with stormwater management that consumers may value. And we specifically look at lifting water restrictions, stream health, reducing the frequency of flash floods, having improved recreational amenity value, and decreasing summer temperatures. And the other element here is cost, and I'll show you sort of what the framework looks like. So we had interviewers go to people's houses and present homeowners who are, so this is all within homeowners in different councils, with this scenario. So we always have the status quo, which is no improvements, and then we give them all choices that they can, or alternatives that they can choose from that have different costs. So here is it costs $10, and you get these different changes, and this one would be $25. And they repeat this, each respondent repeats this about 10 times. And so we're doing this in 2 waves in 4 different councils in Victoria and New South Wales. And we had approximately 1,000 respondents, and we just got the data a little bit ago, and we're beginning the analysis part. And the actual outcome and the deliverables will be willingness to pay for individual attributes and an overall stormwater management plan overall. So again, we have some issues with choice modeling, and one of the issues that we're thinking about is that we want to have monetary values, but it's hard to get them, and one value isn't necessarily appropriate. So it's good to get one value to communicate to policymakers, but in reality there may be a range of values, and if you stick with one, it may be too high for some people and too low for others. But again, we're trying to balance getting accurate information along with something that's easy to communicate and people can actually use. So again, this is, I think, especially difficult when you're trying to value goods that aren't in the market, so you can't just go and say, I know how much people value polka dot t-shirts because I can observe how many people buy them and what they're paying for them. But what we're really trying to do in this study is to acknowledge that there are biases when you start doing this non-market valuation, and to address them up front and try to deal with them. Not just say we have to interpret it this way, but to try to get around them. And I'm just going to talk about what we actually did. So again, we were going to households and presenting them with this option. And in this context, one of the biases that arises is the fact that it's a hypothetical decision. So you're saying, oh, well, how much would you be willing to pay? But you don't actually have to pay this. So that tends to bias the answers upwards. So they're actually overstating what they would be willing to pay. So what we did is we randomly selected a group of the households and gave them some money up front, and then told them one of these choices is actually, we're going to hold you to it. So if you say that you're going to be willing to pay $25, you're going to have to give us $25. And one interesting element of this is that since we randomly selected one of their answers, we had to apply for a gambling license. And there's one of the many administrative and bureaucratic hoops that we had to jump through. And then, so we're going to compare this to the group that doesn't have this monetary incentive. So their answers are purely hypothetical. And we want to see if there are any differences between them. So here are the preliminary results. And the takeaway message is that there's really systematic variation across our sample. And one quote that this reminds me of is there is an economic advisor to Lyndon Johnson, who was a US president, and he wanted to give them a range of numbers that for this one piece of analysis. And the president said, ranges are for cattle, give me a number. And hopefully what I can convince you here is that it's important to get ranges, and it's important to understand the sources that will cause different types of people or different locations to value stormwater management in different ways. So part of it is just in the way that you go through the methodology. So again, we tried to remove one source of bias by giving people a monetary incentive to answer accurately. And there's also ways that how you analyze the data. And then there's just demographic and regional variation. And this is just true because different types of people and people in different places will value different elements of stormwater management. And I think it's important to understand that and to try to identify how that drives the results. So here are some of the preliminary results. So we find that when we do provide people with this monetary incentive, it decreases the likelihood that they're going to pay for an option, and they're more likely to choose the status quo. We also find that income is a big driver in how people make their choices. So they're much more sensitive to the cost of the project, and they also have a greater response to the monetary treatment. So again, if you give these higher income households $50 and say you're going to have to pay for this, that's not maybe a big deal to them, but for lower income households, they're more sensitive to that type of treatment. And they also don't really care as much about removing water restrictions, which I think is intuitive because basically what a water restriction is giving you is the ability to pay to water your garden. So if you wouldn't be interested in watering your garden anyways, then you don't care about paying for a project that will allow you to do that. We also find that those who are more engaged in nature activities and are more willing to pay for stormwater management, and that there's regional variation. So we just found that in different councils, they preferred different types of attributes. And I'm just going to produce an illustrative example. These are still preliminary results of willingness to pay for the different attributes. And this is for removing watering restrictions. And again, they do have wide confidence intervals, and I think after our sort of latest econometric specifications have lower magnitudes, but the relative differences across the groups still remain. So I think that's what I would like to focus on. So
is that per household or per?
This is per household per year. So this was framed in a way that this is going to be added to your annual water bill. So again, this is just for lifting restrictions, and we see that there's, in different councils, they have very different preferences for it. Across income levels, there's different preferences for it. And if you actually have to pay, there's very different results. So again, just in conclusion, we're trying to put monetary values on the environment, and it's difficult. And we think that we need to be really careful about how you design the methodology and then how you analyze it and interpret the results. And the variation really leads to more questions. So when we're talking about our adoption plan and who our audience is, I think it really, the fact that we get systematic variation is important. So is this informative at a national level? I don't know. And maybe we can provide some information that can be generalizable, but others may be specific to certain communities based on the demographics and thinking about the preferences for the type of attributes that they care about. And I'm also interested with people in the audience in how you can think or what your reaction is to getting different numbers for different households, and if that's useful, or if there is some way to sort of aggregate the results up, if that would be more beneficial. And I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.